Does your business need funds to grow? The Hebrew Free Loan Society of New York City, the HFLS, is a nonprofit organization that offers interest-free loans to low and moderate income residents of New York City, Long Island, and Westchester.
Welcome to the CHYE in partnership with COL Live K Factor podcast with your host, Rabbi Yehoshua Wordy, director of CHYE. Each week we bring you interviews with amazing Jewish entrepreneurs sharing their challenges and successes. Their stories will inspire you to make the Keli to take your business aspirations to the next level. Barry Horowitz, owner of Bunch of Bagels, the iconic bagel shop of Crown Heights. And we're honored that you took off from your busy schedule to be with us today. Welcome to the K Factor.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
I know your crazy schedule, and I know that you had to clear off a lot from your plate to come and make it here today. And I'm thankful and honored. So, look, at this point, everybody, if there isn't anyone in Crown Heights that doesn't know your store, it's become an iconic place in Crown Heights. It's almost like when I grew up in South Florida. And if you went out to South Florida, you had to go to Sarah's Pizza. Like you didn't come to Florida if you didn't go to Sarah's Pizza. So, like if someone comes to Crown Heights and they don't stop at Bunch of Bagels to pick up, or to eat your signature bagels or, pick up one of your signature salads, then they weren't really in Crown Heights. So what we love to do here at the K Factor is we like to hear people's stories, how they transitioned when they finished yeshiva, what journey they took to opening their business. So let's do that. Let's jump all the way back. Let's start from, I don't know, you came back from Eretz Yisrael.
How far back do you want to go?
Let's come. You came back from Eretz Yisrael.
And I got married.
And
I went right back to Eretz Yisrael. Went on an 8-month honeymoon to Tzfas.
With some Kollel mixed in, right?
Yes, that's what it was. It was Kollel, but it was, just the opportunity to get to spend time with my wife, and not have to be burdened by the day-to-day grind of, what I do today. And trying to make a living and, support my wife, my 4 beautiful kids, thank God.
That's right, and Mazel Tov on your latest addition to the family.
Yeah, it's 3 months now.
Kanai Nahara.
Yeah, Kanai Nahara, Baruch Hashem.
So you come back from Eretz Yisrael, you're coming back from, and you come here to America. What's the first thing you do?
The first thing I got involved in was actually I was working with my brother-in-law for a bit at the Shuk at the time. I tried to get involved in a couple other things because I didn't really like that. I tried to get into the commercial mortgage business with my brother Sruli, who was working for my father at the time. That was back in 06 and 07, right before, everything went south. I worked at Hask for a bit, trying to become a supervisor there. Didn't really stomach it so well. And then, I was just doing whatever I could to, make a buck at the time. And then one day I was heading out to my father-in-law's house and he said, "Oh, come pick up some bagels on your way out." I said, "Sure, no problem. I just have to make a little detour," because he's not from Crown Heights. And, I didn't want to give him bagels from here that weren't authentic, New York style bagels. So I made a little detour, picked up some bagels, and then later that day we were hanging out and talking. And he said, "Are you serious that there's no, legitimate bagel shop in Crown Heights?" I said, "No, there's a bagel shop there. It's just not the kind of bagels you're used to." And I said, "I'm kind of in between things right now. If you want, let's open a bagel shop." And I was kind of joking, but slowly things started to progress, to where we are today.
So let's break that down a little. Slowly things started to progress. So I mean, you had no background in baking and no background with bagels, and you decided you wanted to open an authentic bagel shop in Crown Heights. How do you even begin to start? I mean, you got to start. You got to even have a bagel recipe first. So what was once you decided that you're going to open a bagel shop, what was the process that went into making that happen?
So I don't know if things happened in the proper order that they would normally happen in the business world. I met with my father-in-law. He said, yeah, sure. He was, in the recording industry, actually. He had a studio for 17 years. He did commercials and things like that for Coke and Pepsi and like a lot of big, advertising agencies. And he was kind of in between a couple things himself. He was working with his brother-in-law at the time. And he said, yeah, I can stop what I'm doing and we can do this together. So we started out jotting down, some ideas, making somewhat of a business plan. I met with my father, who was in the mortgage industry for a while, who knew something about loans and how to, obtain money, because you need money to open a store. He gave me some pointers. He said it's not his forte, but he gave me a couple of pointers at the time. He said, you need a good business plan. You got to, there are programs out there that actually, my brother Yossi gave me a program that he got from his school. He was in culinary school, and he had just graduated, and so he gave me some ideas of what to look at. And then my brother-in-law had a building that we're in now, the 361.
All right, but before we get to the location, let's talk a little bit about, you need a bagel before a location. How did you, with no background?
We did that backwards. We were like $200,000 invested before I knew how to make a bagel. That was a bit bizarre, but we had, I had blind faith,
right.
Sound to the Shemaya that it was going to work.
So talk to us a little bit though about, how you went about finding that bagel recipe.
So the bagel recipe, we ended up, we bought our bagel oven from a guy named Howard Rockman. Their company is called B-Rock. They're out in Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, actually. I almost got detoured to moving out there in the middle of all this. They met me and they're like, oh, we could use a bakery here. Why don't you just come work for us? and I considered it for a minute. I actually went out to Matti Hershkop. He lives out there, so I spent the Shabbos with him and Mendy Seawald, who was living there at the time.
Right.
And yeah, we even thought about moving there for a minute. But he introduced me, this guy, Howard Rockman, introduced me to a guy named David Bernstein, who was an old school baker. His family was like 3 generations deep in the baking world. He introduced him to me, and he was about 85 at the time. And he said, I need this like a hole in my head. I'm done teaching people how to bake. But Howard somehow convinced me to just meet me. He said, just meet the guy. And David had a son named Barry who died of something, I don't know what. And he kind of took a liking to me. And he was like, yeah, why not? I'll teach you. Sure. I mean, he wore this giant, like a gold bagel necklace that he had. Yeah, a big chai and a gold.
So he was a master bagel.
That man was baking. I mean, he had thermometers like built into his hand. He can tell you like the temperature and the humidity in the air by just like waving his hand in the air. He was able to tell you the temperature of the oven, no problem. He was just that his entire life. He grew up, his father was a baker. He was in the bakery from when he was like 8. And he traveled the world and taught people how to bake. He had a very successful bakery on Coney Island for a long time, and then he retired and sold it. And I was lucky enough to meet him and learn how to bake.
So he trained you. He gave you training.
We found some guy on through some Google search. We found like a baker's apprentice guy who came out and taught us, but he didn't know much. He was just looking to make a quick buck. I think maybe for what he knew, it was good, but it wasn't what we were looking for. And then David came in and spent time with us, and he told me, you're not ready to bake yet. You need shelves here, you need your storage bins here. He's like, you need a lot more infrastructure before you're ready to bake. So he gave me a list of things to do, and he said, call me in a month or 2 when you're done, and I'll come back. And he would check in on us periodically. And eventually we just started baking.
So this is all before you opened? Or you already opened?
Yeah, so this is before we opened. And then when we were ready to open while we were finishing the decor in the front and tables and chairs and stuff like that. We were baking, and we actually just stood outside and started giving away whatever we baked. Because it wasn't a perfected product yet,
Right.
so we weren't able to bake, or sell it. But we were baking it, and it was trial and error. And at some point, it got to a point where it was good enough to sell. And we stopped giving them away for free, and we started selling them.
Well, I have to say, it's amazing, Hashgacha Pratis, because you nailed the bagel. You really have a tremendous. The flavor of your bagels is tremendous, and it's a thing people call. It's a destination. The Eibishter guided you.
Yes, definitely.
So,
every step of the way.
So take us back now. So talking about location, and this is something I distinctly remember, because I remember when you were opening up. So everyone was saying Troy Avenue.
They told me I was nuts. Everybody said I was crazy. No,
So,
don't open there. You're nuts. Everybody knows in retail it's location, 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 and it is location, location, location. And
so what made you choose to do it there on Troy Avenue? What was the calculation?
The calculation was the rent was good. And my belief at the time was, and still is, that if you have a good product and the neighborhood is big enough to support, me and some, and clearly you can see that over the past 10 years, there's been another, 8 restaurants that opened in the neighborhood, if not more.
Right.
Some have succeeded, most have succeeded, and a few have failed.
Right.
And if you offer a good product and a quality product, and you treat your customers respectfully and nice, and you say please and thank you, and you listen to them, then you got a recipe for success.
Yeah, no question about it. No question about it. So let's digging a little deeper, though. I mean, so there's your bagels. But you've somehow managed not just your bagels. You've managed to create many signature dishes that are very unique, proprietary just to you, and you sort of hit it out of the park, time and again. Tell us a little. What's after your bagel? When we
first opened, we actually planned to do it the way we're doing it today, where we had a full line of equipment to do pastas and fish and a full cafe menu. The name of the store, which I was, butting heads with my father-in-law at the time, we came up with the name for Bunch of Bagels, but he insisted on calling it Crown Heights Bunch of Bagels and More, because he was very into the yellow pages and how people, use directories and how you find things. So we called it Crown Heights so people would know we're from here. And, if somebody was looking for a bagel shop in Crown Heights, this was before Google search and all that was super, super popular the way it is today. And now you're in a location and it gives you, 50 options before you even ask. So the and more part was supposed to be all these other, menu items that we now serve. But that proved to be a bit more, trying and taxing than we realized. It was tough enough just opening the store and just producing our bagels and, cream cheese. We were making everything from scratch. We didn't have our own cow and we weren't, producing our own milk and cheese, but all the flavors and that stuff that we whip in-house, all the muffin batters and stuff we were making from scratch, that takes time and a lot of energy. And we worked like dogs. I mean, our mornings were crazy. We were there at 3 a.m. trying to get ready. We had a guy, Yussel Edelstein, that was working for us at the time. He had just graduated culinary school. So he was our chef and making, wraps. And it was just the basic stuff we were trying to make was very taxing. And it wasn't all peaches and cream. It was tough. So we chose to put that other and more stuff on the back burner and focus on, our main goal. And that was, producing a good bagel product. And, we did a bunch of research and trying to find good coffee and, making a good, muffin and cookie and cream cheese.
Let's talk a little bit about like a process. I mean, somehow you've managed to come up with certain, all the offerings you have are like signature and they're unique to you. and you've done it right. Would you have like a particular process? What's your criteria?
A lot of trial and error. I fail often, I fail hard, I fail fast. And then I get up and figure out how to do it all over again.
Aside from your bagel, what would you say has been your number one product that you came out with?
Our salads do very well for us. We have a dressing that we make that, this is our house dressing that people line up for. People.
Who comes up with your salads? How does that?
Originally, my sister and I did a bunch of them. Yessel Edelstein started the first few. I tweaked the dressings with my sister. And then it was very basic for the first 3, 4, 5 years. We had, I think, 4 salads that we offered. There was a Greek salad, a garden salad, a Caesar salad, and then we had one sweet spinach salad that my sister had given me. And it was the same thing over and over again, and our customers were religious. There was most of our customers, if not all, we knew by first name basis, and they just kept coming back. There were repeats. Occasionally we would see a new guy, but we had a very loyal following. Then we started doing brissim and things like that. And
I would say, by the way, one of the things that I believe, if I recall correctly, you introduced to Crown Heights is your system of how your customer service. People come in, you take their name, that whole process. How did you come up with that?
I think I found that at Starbucks one day. I didn't reinvent that. And the same way we do like the order and the pickup, I didn't try and reinvent it. Another thing my father-in-law and I had a conversation about one day, and he said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You just have to, make it better. And Goodyear and all these companies that produce tires and whatever else they do, their focus is just taking something that already exists and not reinventing it, but just improving on it.
Right.
And that's basically what we were doing. You order in one spot, pick up in the other, and just to create a flow of traffic so that there's some continuity to, the foot traffic and the flow of things.
Right.
And that's evolving day to day. When you're handling a crowd of 10, 20 people, it's one thing. When you're handling a crowd of 100 people, it's very different.
Right.
We got aggressively more and more efficient in, pumping out orders. And, there are days where it's not all, smooth sailing, and there's kinks, and, somebody doesn't show up or part of your system breaks down. When you rely a lot on computers and technology, when it's all going, it's great.
Right.
And the transition from, we had a manual register to, and handwriting orders and running back and forth to changing over to the POS system that we use was a major game changer.
Right.
We physically couldn't keep up with it at one point, and then we transitioned to this. It took us a while to find the right company. And when we did, it was painful. There were so many, mistakes and issues happening, but we stuck to it.
Right.
And, now today...
If I recall correctly, and you guys introduced this, almost everyone has the system now where you take a person's name and it's like a whole system. So
the system itself was out there for a long time.
Right, but I'm saying here in the neighborhood, no one was using it.
Well, I'm glad to contribute to,
So you have this successful bagel store that Baruch Hashem has taken off, and then you go ahead and you open a new endeavor. Tell us a little bit about what happened, what brought you to opening up your Fish and Cannoli store, and the lessons you learned from that.
After about...
and I want to just say, CHY is on Empire.
Yes, we were right across the street.
We were right across the street, and I missed those days when I could just run across the street and get a fresh falafel.
Sorry. Now you got a liquor store. You can go get a fresh drink. Or there's the supermarket. You can get a... So there were a lot of ups and downs in opening the store and doing catering jobs and getting from a chaotic schedule of like 3 a.m. to semi-normal. We had, after about a year or so, I woke up one day in the store holding a 500-degree pan in my hand with no glove on. I don't remember getting there. I was beyond tired. I don't even remember opening the store, going in. I don't remember any of that. I just remember waking up with this scalding hot pan in my hand, melting my skin to the metal. It was terrible. Obviously, I landed up at the doctor's office. Thankfully, I didn't have to go to the hospital for that situation. But I got severely burnt and was out of commission for a couple of days. I was still at the store doing other stuff, but I couldn't, use my hands for a bit. That wasn't the first burn I got, but that was bad. And it was a wake-up call that I had to, change my schedule a little bit. I was burning the candle on both ends way too much. So we eventually hired somebody to open in the mornings to do the first morning shift from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. so I can get a little more sleep and start becoming a little more, normal. And one thing led to another, and I slowly, Baruch Hashem, we were making more and more money and paying back our loans. When we first opened the store, I was living off of borrowed money. I mean, every penny we had from that place, obtaining the loans was crazy. We ran out of money 2-3 times trying to open the store. There were way too many, I shouldn't say too many because clearly we succeeded, but there were a lot of obstacles from, finances to getting the gas permits to open the store. We waited nearly 6 months for Con Ed to come dig up the street to give us the proper size, gas pipe we needed to run our oven. Eventually they gave us a temporary meter, and then they dug up the street, and we were down for a day or so when they made the transition. But eventually a lot of the dust and the chaos of that and just getting open started to settle, and my schedule started to become semi-normal. And then things started getting really good, where I would come to the store at, 6 a.m., work for a couple of hours. About 2 o'clock, I'd run out, go to the gym. I had a personal trainer. I started focusing on my health and trying to, build myself to the point where I could maintain this on a long-term basis. And we started getting, very comfortable. And things started becoming, almost boring, to the point where we got to, if anybody's in the industry would understand the itch to for the chaos again. After there's an adrenaline rush when you're, doing anything new. But especially when you succeed at it, there's this, euphoric high. You're like, wow, I've, climbed Mount Everest. I can do this. Let me do it again. And we had this crazy idea to open up a fish and chip shop, this Fish Cannoli. But we said, we don't want to do it like a regular fish and chip shop. Let's do it, upscale. The cannolis were something that nobody kind of really knew what they were. And it's a very nice, rich Italian dessert. We thought that if we introduced that together with the fish, it would, kind of up the ante a bit. To be honest, I wasn't 100% convinced with the whole project. My father-in-law was very behind it. He was, very into it. But I was bored and I was kind of, passive about it. So I said, yeah, why not? Hey, we were lucky here. Why not? Let's try this too. Back to the bank we went. We went and got ourselves another loan. We were approved for close to $200,000. And then we started, and then the economy, it was right after the crash, and things weren't going as smooth as everyone hoped. And the bank pulled most of our loan. They're like, no, you can have $80,000 they gave us, I think, in the end. And that's not enough to open up a store.
Right.
Not if you want to do it right.
But take us to the lesson. In other words, you end up opening the store, and it's
so we opened the store. It was going. it also had its own, tests and trials. It took us a good 8 months to get the doors open, way more than we anticipated. And then things weren't going as smooth as we had hoped. One of the issues I had with it was that my father-in-law and I were still at the store every day. And my claim to him was, who's going to run that store? If you and I are still here, who's going to run that store? And he said, oh, don't worry, we'll hire a manager. And one thing I can tell you for sure is when you start any new business, unless your manager is your partner, you cannot hire him. And I don't think it was any fault of the manager that we hired. It was our fault that, we hired somebody who didn't have the experience it took to run a store like that. The place was overstaffed. It was mismanaged. Inventory control was terrible.
So looking back at that whole experience, what would you say was the lesson that you learned from that?
That one of us should have been there, that we should not have attempted to open that store without the ability for one of us to be there, at least for a majority of the day. It didn't have to be the whole thing. Eventually we realized that, and I started running the bagel shop from morning to night, and he went to the fish and chip shop. And by then it was already a little too far gone. The expression "first impressions count." We did not. I don't know if we didn't make a good first impression, but it wasn't the same wow that we made on Troy Avenue at the bagel shop. We had no seats for starters. It was a much smaller space. The concept was designed to be very different. But it wasn't working. And in hindsight, it was divinely ordained because it was a blessing in disguise. Looking back at it now, it was, number one, it taught me a valuable lesson. Number two, when the way we rectified it was we decided to close that store and integrate it to the bagel shop, and increase our lunch menu and all the other items that we originally had planned on doing, and more. So now we were in a position to kind of shift gears a little bit and go back to the and more that we originally had planned. And that's exactly what we did. Mm-hmm. We closed that store a good $200,000 in debt. And I was very tempted to just tell the bank to go fly a kite. It was a separate corporation.
Right.
We could have. But we didn't.
So what was your
my moral compass didn't allow me to do that.
What was the number one dish that was good there that you brought over now? That's like in the store.
We had the Mexican sandwich that we offered there that was very popular.
Right, and
that we offer now. It's still a hot item. Sometimes hotter than others.
Right.
There was the pastas and stuff that we offered, the fish and chips that we offer.
Right.
What else?
What happened to the cannoli? Like slowly it just totally disappeared.
So the cannoli we stopped serving because it was costing us more to educate the public than it was profitable.
Uh-huh.
In order to make the cannolis, we were going out to like a special factory in Long Island, and we would have to do a special pasistral run, and we had to get the okay and hire mashkiach, and it was quite they were delicious.
Yes.
Their shelf life is less than a day.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start to pipe the cream into the hard shell starts to get soft. And the only reason a cannoli is good is because it's got this hard shell and this delicious cream on the inside.
Right.
And when the two start to mix, it slowly becomes a mush. And, that's no fun.
Uh-huh. So the cannolis have disappeared from the kosher menu.
Yeah, there's some other places out there trying to make them, and they make like soft shell cannolis that I think Shlomi's Bakery or some other places in Williamsburg or Borough Park make. But it's not the traditional Italian cannoli.
So coming up now, we're over here towards the end of our interview. I just want to ask you a few rapid-fire questions now. Okay, number one is, let's say, if you could go back to when you started, what would be the one thing you changed? Or, what would that one lesson you wish someone told you when you were starting that would have made all the difference to you?
If I listened to everything and all the advice people had given me, I wouldn't be where I am today. all the advice I got was, don't open on Troy Avenue. It's a bad idea. Don't go into the food business. It's crazy hours. It's taxing. It's, you can say goodbye to your family if you open, a retail food establishment. And some of that is true.
So let me ask you like this, and I'm putting you on a spot over here, but there's a difference between being crazy and doing an educated, you're doing an educated assumption, if that's the right word to use. So, you started this business. What was the wisdom that you had? You look back now and you created this successful, iconic location.
So
what was it?
The advice I got from my father, and with the help of my father-in-law, with the with the business plan and obtaining the money, that was a key factor. We could not have.
So banks, when they look at a business plan, they want to see a solid business plan. So.
Yeah, so we showed them.
What was so solid that there was so many?
We showed them the demographics of the neighborhood. We showed them the schools, the locations. We showed them, proposed marketing strategies that we were going to attempt to get, like the school kids to come in.
Now, generally, banks don't lend startups. How did you pull?
Things were different then.
Yeah,
things were very different then.
Uh-huh.
And they do lend to startups. You just need a solid plan, and you have to have solid credit, and you need to have some kind of credit history.
Right.
I had a bit, and my father-in-law had a lot. He had a phenomenal credit score. He had a good track record of maintaining his credit and paying his bills.
Right.
And the underwriter at the bank kind of, just bought into everything we sold him. I don't know if it was, him being blinded by the sight of, like this father and son team, or just.
Okay.
So that getting the money was a key thing. If anybody wants to start a business or, do your homework. I kind of wish I'd known how to make a bagel beforehand, but in hindsight, it was great that I didn't, because I got to meet a phenomenal person, and learned a lot from him about what it is to work hard and set your mind to it and set
So putting you I'm talking about the restaurant industry and how it work-life balance. What
it's a balance.
What wisdom do you want to tell people? How do you do that? How do you throw yourself into a business head over heels and at the same time maintain a family, maintain a little bit of your Jewish spirituality?
It's tough.
What would you tell people? What secret do you use?
Invest. You got to invest. I was grateful enough to have a good, strong foundation in my Jewish beliefs and backgrounds and structure. And that definitely helped. And you have to keep coming back to it. You can't just, say, I'm putting my Yiddishkeit on the shelf now for my business, and I'll get back to it when I can. It doesn't work that way. Anything you invest in, you reap what you sow.
Right.
If you don't go out to your backyard that's full of grass and expect to be picking, produce from it. If you didn't plant anything, you're not going to get anything from it.
Right.
And I was grateful enough to, have that.
Right. Very nice. Is there any particular business book you ever read that was like, wow, we wanted to share with people, some sort of recommended reading?
Nothing that jumps out at me. I read a bunch of cookbooks and startup books from, restaurateurs and, business ideas, how to run, successful cafes or restaurants, hotels. I've read articles here and there.
Is there a particular business person that you look up to as like your role model business person?
In the restaurant business, there's one guy I've taken some good advice from. This guy Adam Kay. He owns Abigail's. Sorry, not Abigail's. He owns Carlos and Gabby's and Upper Crust. He owns a few other restaurants. He's given me some good advice and good pointers.
Mm-hmm. How'd you guys connect? Or?
My sister had a burger place next door to him in the Five Towns, and he had a vacancy there, and he had a gelato shop that didn't work, that he wanted to turn into something else. There was also this chef that worked for us that helped us start up the fish and chip shop. This guy Raymond Mercedes is his last name. He gave us some decent pointers. He actually helped improve our salad line tremendously. Mm-hmm. After Trump's campaign, he said, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I know how to find the smartest people.
Right.
So you don't have to be the smartest guy. Right. You just have to know how to find smart people. And Raymond was a gem. He still is. He knew a lot. He worked at Abigail's restaurant for a long time with Jeff Nathan. Mm-hmm. He was in that kitchen, I think, for 17 years. Mm-hmm. And he eventually decided he wanted to go out and do his own thing. And I was lucky enough to have him for a bit.
Is there any story of Kiddush Hashem that happened through your store that you're proud of? Something, or a Hashgacha Pratis story that happened that you...
Oh, my entire store is Hashgacha Pratis. The whole, start to finish of it was bizarre. Mm. And every time I look back at it and think about it, it's one thing after another was just Hashgacha Pratis.
So you see the hand of Hashem.
Yeah. You just... I don't have to tell you. I mean, it's public information that the success rate of restaurants is, I think, 1 to 100 or something like that, or mm-hmm. 5 to 100.
Right.
Tons of people try it.
Right.
And it's I don't know what it is or why people have the itch to try it. It's crazy, but it's extremely rewarding and fulfilling. And when you get to make people happy with food and you're able to make something nice and people eat it and say, wow, that's delicious,
right,
you get to be a part of it.
So if you had to look back now on the last 10 years, what's the one thing you're most proud of?
That I'm still here. It's maybe my family, that I was able to maintain, a healthy relationship with my wife, my kids, through all the chaos. That was, that could be trying sometimes.
Right.
That I worked hard, that I, succeeded.
Baruch Hashem.
Yes, Baruch Hashem.
So, last but not least, if people listening to this podcast want to reach out to you with some questions or some of your wisdom, how could they reach out to you?
They can either call me at the store or email me. The store number is 718-604-0634, extension 2 or 3. You can find me there.
You give somebody some time to...
Absolutely. I've always been, willing and able to help whoever. Over the years, quite a few people. I mean, Yossi Gershevitz, who's running a very successful place on Kingston now. Right. Spoke to him pretty extensively before he opened. Shia Gordon had the baguette place for a bit before it was the pizza place now.
Right.
Spoke with him for a bit. Donnie from the pizza shop, Dagan. He and I are good friends. We spoke quite a few times.
Right.
If anybody needs advice or wants to, reach out to me, awesome. Tell them what not to do or what to do. I've learned a lot what not to do that I can tell you.
So what's the number one what not to do?
Don't overextend yourself because you get burnt.
Okay. So thank you very much, Shalom Barry. It's been a fascinating discussion. And everybody listening, have a wonderful week. Wishing you continued hatzlacha in all your business endeavors. And as the Rebbe would always say, Mechayel El Chayel, bracha v'hatzlacha.
The Hebrew Free Loan Society of New York City, the HFLS, is a nonprofit organization that offers interest-free loans to low and moderate income residents of New York City, Long Island, and Westchester. HFLS offers loans for a variety of needs, including higher education, adoption, addiction recovery, fertility treatments, business startup and expansion, and general emergencies. All HFLS loans must be guaranteed by 2 guarantors who have good credit and earn at least $60,000 per year. For more information, please call 212-687-0188, extension 200, or check out their website at www.hfls.org.
Thank you for listening to the CHYE in partnership with COL Live, A Factor podcast with your host, Rabbi Yehoshua Wordy. We're looking forward to bringing you more entrepreneurs to share their amazing stories. See you next week.